Boris Johnson can no longer afford to play Mr. Nice Guy in dealings with Brussels after the EU's latest legal threats, a pro-Brexit campaigner has warned. Jane Addai, director of Get Britain Out, said the bloc was currently behaving like an adversary and needed to be treated as such. Mrs. Addai was speaking after Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster Michael Gove announced a 6-month delay to the introduction of controls on some imports from the European Union into Great Britain. The government had agreed to phase in customs requirements for GB imports from the EU over a 6-month period, but has extended the timetable after businesses said they needed more time to prepare. The unilateral move prompted European Commissioner Maros Sefcovic to initiate plans to take legal action against the UK for what he said amounted to a breach of international law. But for Mrs. Addai believes the UK government's decision is an example of Mr. Johnson's unwillingness to stand up to Brussels. She said, this week's announcement by the government that they are once again extending the start date for checks on goods entering the UK from the EU is another signal of unnecessary and one-sided compromises from the government, right at a time when this couldn't be further from what is required. It seems the Prime Minister's belief that common sense would prevail is proving to be fanciful, as the EU continues to reject the basic premise of UK sovereignty and refuses to act with even a shred of common sense. Mrs. Addai added, the EU is now set to launch legal proceedings against the UK for our decision to unilaterally extend the grace period on checks between goods moving between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, all part of the United Kingdom. In other words, while we act in a generous and mutually beneficial manner, the EU decides instead to try and break apart the United Kingdom, all while still trying to force the UK into accepting European Court of Justice jurisdiction. Such behavior was not that of a friend and partner, but of an adversary, determined to under everything we stand for, she claimed. She said, it is time we pushed back against the EU and no longer played the part of Mr. Nice Guy, who always blinks first in a standoff.